let's look at this idea of simple interest. Okay, and we're not going to get into the whole big crazy pieces, but we're going to talk about this thing called simple interest. Okay, and this is just a way that we calculate if you put a certain amount of money in, and over a certain amount of time at a certain rate, how much money will you get back? And that's basically all we're doing. Okay, and we're going to use a couple of words in here. We're going to use this thing called principal. Principal. And we're not talking about, the person that runs a school. We're talking about the amount of money. This is the amount of money that you've invested or sometimes even borrowed. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Okay. Now, simple interest, let's use another color here to highlight this. When we're talking about simple interest, okay, we're talking about simple interest. Okay, we're talking about the amount of money that is paid or earned for the use of money. So it's the amount paid or earned to use, or let's say for the use of. Let's write that a little bit better. Let's say for the use of money. Okay, and so in the case of you using a bank account, right, the bank is now paying you back money for allowing them to use your money for, again, giving out loans or paying bills or things like that, and then they have to pay you interest and pay you some money back, right? So this is called simple interest. Now, interest, in general, this interest equation is made up of three terms. Okay, interest is the principal. Okay, times, we'll do that, times the rate. So this is the interest rate. The interest rate multiplied by the time, the amount of time that the money was used for. Okay. So this is the principal is the money invested or borrowed. Money invested or borrowed. Okay. The interest rate is a percent. It's always going to be a percent. Okay, or it's given as a percent. Percent is given, but it should be written as a decimal. Okay, you don't need to keep it as a percent. You should change it to a decimal. And then obviously time is how long, let's write this falling out. Time is in years. Okay, simple interest is not about necessarily months or minutes, it's just over a year. So this is the money invested times the rate times the number of years that you've had this money in the bank or in some account, right? And we can write this just a little bit simpler. We can condense this a little bit. And we say that I is equal to P, or the principal, times R times T. Okay. And some people say it called PERT. I've heard it called PERT before. Okay. So this is the interest is equal to the principal times the rate, written as a decimal, multiplied by the time in years. All right. So let's say that you have a bank account, or let's say a savings account. Okay. And in that savings account, you have a total of $580 in this savings account. Okay. And this account pays 3% interest. Okay. Pays 3% interest. Okay. And you'd like to know how much interest you're going to make in 5 years. Okay. So if you leave that money in the bank, that $580 in the bank for 5 years, how much money are you going to have after that 5 years? Or how much interest will you earn in 5 years? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this 580. We're going to take this 580. I'm going to write this. This is our P here. This is P. And then we're going to, let's write that over here, right? So interest is equal to that $580. $580, that's our principal, multiplied by the rate, which was the 3% interest. Remember that 3% is the same thing as 0.03. It's out of 100, so we have 3/100. So that's multiplied by 0.03. And then that is going to be multiplied by the time of 5 years. Okay? 5 years. Okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that 580 by the 0.3 and then multiply that by the 5. All right, so why don't we do that? So let's take 580 and multiply it by 0.3. 580 times 0.03. We get 3 times 0, which is just 0. 3 times 8, which is 24. Carry my 2. 3 times 5, right, gives me 15. Plus 2 is 17. We had 2 decimal places, so I have 1740. And then I'm going to multiply that by 5. With our 5 years here. So 5 times 0 is just 0. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry my 2. 5 times 7 is 35. Plus 2 is 37. Carry my 3. And then 5 times 1 plus 3 is 8. I had 2 decimal points, so I need to carry my decimal place over 2, and I get $87. So in 5 years, with an account that has $580 at an interest rate of 3%, I should make $87. Okay, that's actually pretty good, right? And $87 in a couple years. Imagine if this was a few $1,000s, right? This would hopefully double or triple, right? Now, that's when we're paying interest, right? And that's when the bank is paying interest to us. But what about if you borrow money, right? If you borrow money. So let's say that you have borrowed, I'll use green again for money, right? So let's say that you have borrowed $12,000. So you're purchasing a car and you've saved up a certain amount of money, but you need $12,000 more. You're going to take a loan from the bank, borrow money from the bank, okay? And this bank will give you this money, but it's going to cost you a 6% interest. So they're going to charge you 6% interest, okay, on this loan. So when you pay it back, based on the amount of time that you've used it for, or how much time you've spent paying this off, you're going to have to pay back 6% interest at whatever rate they charge. Okay. And if you take let's say that you take 3 years to pay off this loan, how much interest are you going to have to pay in addition to that $12,000? You have to pay that back, right? But then they're going to have you pay an extra 6% over that 3 years to make money. Okay. So If you are paying interest over 3 years, right? Remember, we have the interest PERT formula here. We have PERT, and PERT is interest. We'll do this, right? We got interest times principal times rate times time, or equal to principal times rate times time. So I'm going to take my $12,000. I'm going to multiply that by my 0.06. We changed that 6% to a decimal. And then I'm going to multiply that by 3. Okay. Now we could actually make this a little bit simpler. Let's do 12,000 times 3, and we'll get those two simplified first, right? So we got 12,000 times 3. 12 times 3 is just 36, so that's 36,000. And then we're going to multiply that by 0.06. Okay. And if we do that, we'll carry that up here. We have 36000 times 0.06. 6 times 0 is 0. We do that for the 3 zeros. 6 times 6 is 36. Carry my 3. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 3 is 21. I had 2 decimals there, so I need 2 decimal points there. I'm going to be paying a total of $2,160 in interest. Okay, this is why if you're encouraged if you can, you're encouraged to not take out a loan, because it's going to cost you, if even 3 years, right? If you're maybe going to college, that's a lot of money that you got to pay back that you have to now come up with, rather than just paying it all off at once. So the sooner you can pay it off, the better. You don't have to pay that interest. Okay. Now the total amount you're going to pay back to the bank is that 12,000 plus that 2160, right? So you're going to add those up, and that's about $14,160 rather than just the 12,000. Okay. So when you're finding interest, you need to multiply the amount that was borrowed or invested by the rate at which the bank either pays you back money or asks you to pay back money, multiplied by the time you've done that in years. Now, if it was, say, something like 6 months, right? If you had something like 6 months, right, that would be equal to 0.5 years, because 12 months isn't a year. You'd have 0.5 years as your time. Okay, so it's the principal times the rate as a decimal multiplied by the time.